three main roads: Victory Boulevard, Manor Road, and Highland. Oh, like Richmond Avenue. And Forest Avenue.
And Richmond Road.
Forest Avenue.
I didn't say 4-7, I said 4-7.
Forest Avenue.
I said Richmond Road. I never know how. What's that main valve in the heart? That's Highland Boulevard. Amboy Road.
Amboy, yeah. That's the expressway.
Yeah, I know. I never go. I have no reason to go there.
That's pretty odd. Actually, I literally don't go anywhere past Eltingville and nowhere past Newport.
I don't go anywhere past. I go to the mall. Go to the mall and all the South Shore. It's like weird.
Actually, no. You know where, Ford is? Showplace Old?
Yeah.
That's more west side.
It's on the West Shore. 90% of stand-up lives on the eastern coast.
Yeah, 90%.
Because like the western coast is like
Swampland. It's all wet.
well, and the North Shore is all industrial. I saw the video.
The west is all wet.
Yeah. The mall. You know what used to be here? Dude, you don't know like Newport Pier? No, but I've heard of it. Yeah, that's where that's kind of where I live. Yeah. I live actually right here. I go to the park. No, but I agree. Yeah. That's the long list. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Where is that? I literally live like a couple of blocks away. Yeah.
What is the only big storm you have?
The one on Highland Boulevard, right?
Oh no, there's three.
Yeah, so the question is this is
There's Steve Russick and then there's Castle. No,
I used to be able to look at every single hill.
no sands.
They used to go on the train station. The train was on a hill. I used to be able to see like the whole ice skating.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Leshowitz Recital Hall. At this time, we ask that you please silence your electronic devices and locate the nearest exit in the event of an emergency. Please note that food, drink, and flash photography are not permitted in the hall. Thank you and enjoy the performance.
About first, let's go Mets. No, never mind. Oh, Mets. Good evening, everybody. I'm Tony Mazzocchi. I guess we're gonna have to use these for the stream, Christian, just so you know, if you don't mind.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Director of the Cali School of Music, thank you for being here tonight with all of us to listen to this great artist who's here at the Cali School as our artist in residence this year. I'm so happy, you're joining us here, man. This is really unbelievable. And if I only knew, I would have loved to wear my jersey today. I'm telling you, this could have been the best talk ever. But it would take me about 10 minutes to really go through Christian McBride's biography with you all. And since we're only here for a short period of time, I'm going to say, if you don't know everything, which I still don't know yet, about Christian McBride's artistic life, start Googling, obviously with his website. I love your About page, because you really wrote it like a story on your biography page at your site, you know, and which is going to be actually where we start our talk. But in all the different zones where you can live as an artist and an artist citizen and an educator, you're there, and you clearly have this passion and desire to stretch yourself in every single way, whether it's as a speaker, you know, as a player and everything, and it's actually quite incredible. And I wanted to kind of deconstruct with you, for all of our students, since it's an educational institution, how you came about to be who you are today.
Well, thank you, Tony. It's such a beautiful introduction. Pardon me, I came up in a musical family. As you probably know, both my father and my great uncle are also professional bass players. And my uncle, my mother's brother, was a promotions and advertising manager for WHAT radio in Philadelphia. So I grew up around music. So if I had not become a musician, I'm sure I would have gotten a job in music business, because that's just what I was around as a kid. And because my uncle worked for the radio station, his album collection was it was extensive, to say the least. So he had albums from every genre around his apartment, and oftentimes he would get doubles and triples, and he would give them to us. And so my entire childhood was just listening to records all day and all night, mostly soul, rhythm and blues albums, an occasional jazz album, and actually a lot of comedy albums.
Like stand-up comedy?
Yeah, yeah.
Give me a couple.
Well, I mean, out of all of the James Brown, Stevie Wonder, Diana Ross, Aretha Franklin albums, there was always a Flip Wilson album. There was a Bill Cosby album. There was a Bob Newhart album. There was a Moms Mabley album, right? And so those comics became as much a part of my life as those musicians did. You know, I was not allowed to listen to Red Fox, Richard Pryor, George Carlin, Dolomite, for obvious reasons, you know. But of course, the thing that you can tell a child that will guarantee them doing it is to say you're not allowed. So the minute my mom was, you know, not in earshot, I would go put on Richard Pryor, you know, and I would like put my head literally on the speaker so I could hear what he was saying, and all those are so hilarious.
Oh, and genius.
Yeah, and genius, that's right.
Well, we could almost talk about that, because I did not know you were going to go in that direction. But actually, you know, now that when we're talking about pre-college, Philadelphia is a real hotspot for music education. It is. That's the only good thing I'm going to say about Philly today. I'm sorry. This is a very painful Mets loss, everybody. It's very recent.
Hey,
and it wasn't even to them. But you know, because now they have these youth orchestra Play on Philly, and just this real arts ecosystem for young students.
Yeah.
And what I want to weave into this conversation is something that I'm really passionate about, and I think my colleagues here at the Cali School are passionate about, is that, you know, COVID really laid bare where the music industry is, but where music education is for us.
Right.
And, you know, already we have been, in my opinion, we've been creating the haves and have-nots with musical talent at the early ages, meaning that, you know, in public schools, even in Jersey, we'll offer students, you know, 1 day a week of a half an hour of instruction when they're in 4th grade, and like 90 kids will start and they'll, you know, want to play the bass, want to play the trombone, and then 1 year later, most of them quit. And then 5 years later, almost all of them quit. And everybody says, well, those are the musically talented kids, and these aren't. When in fact is, if you only had math a half an hour once a week, nobody's going to be very good at that either.
That's right.
And so COVID hit, and no one started. And when I talk about the inequities about talent, you know, this really was exacerbated with, you know, students from underserved communities, and specifically, you know, students of color. And it's something I'm terribly worried about. So tell me what the ecosystem was like when you grew up in Philly as far as like, arts education and starting. Did you start really because, I mean, your parents were bass players, or was there a system there to help you as well?
I credit everything about my career to my mother, because she's one of those moms that, you know, when you're a kid, your occupation changes probably every hour. You know, hey, I want to be a fireman, I want to be a police officer, I want to be a professional athlete. And whatever I said, my mother was like, fine, cool, no problem. So whatever I said I wanted to do, she always made sure that you know, she would go to any length to make sure that I was in some sort of a after-school program or some sort of program where I could just not be in the street. And you know, I want to make it very clear, we did not come from a very financially secure neighborhood. You know, West Philadelphia, middle to lower class income. But one thing I've always respected about my mom is that her thing was like, that's no excuse for you not to get a good education from wherever, you know. So in retrospect, knowing how hard my mom worked to make sure I did anything but stay in the street, you know, yeah, street football is okay every now and then. Basketball is okay every now and then. I'm gonna keep you busy. Mm-hmm. So when I got into music, which was, well, when I got into the bass, when I started playing the bass at age 9, it was the electric bass. That's my first instrument. My parents had actually already split up by that point, but my parents were still in touch. So my mom called my dad and said, hey, come teach Christian something about playing the bass, right? And so my dad gave him, you know, my first lesson. And fortunately, I remember learning pretty quickly. You know, I guess from watching my dad play so much when I was a kid, I just kind of, you know, you just put it in your head like, okay, that's how you're supposed to hold the electric bass, and that's how your hands, okay, all right. And, but after playing the electric bass by ear for 2 years, just listening to my mother's records and really trying to learn the bass line from every record I heard.
So you're learning the bass line at the ages of 10 and 11 just by ear from the records? 9,
10, yeah, ages 9 through 11. And then when it came time for, you know, when I graduated from elementary school, my mother thought, oh, you're really serious about this. And she said, okay, well, if you're serious, let's get serious. If you're really serious about this, you're gonna have to learn. Yeah, she wanted me to go to a school that had a good music program. And so I went to a place called Pepper Middle School, George Wharton Pepper Middle School in Southwest Philly. School doesn't exist anymore. But they had a
Arts Magna?
Yes, I think it was.
I mean, it doesn't matter, but I was curious.
Was it? No, I don't think it was. But for all of the different middle schools in public middle schools in Philly. They had the best, the most respected music program. And that's when I started playing the double bass. First day of orchestra rehearsal, you know, everybody who signed up for orchestra, we went to the orchestra room that day, they said, pick the instrument you want. And I thought, well, I already play the electric bass, I don't need to play the double bass too, you know, and so I picked the trombone. That was the first.
Good choice.
And I didn't do very well with the trombone. And so the brass instructor said, well, I understand you play the electric bass, why don't you play the double bass? I was like, I don't want to play this. I don't want to play the upright bass. You know, it's big and clunky and, you know, it's like, it's just not cool, right? Boy, how wrong was I? So,
Well, especially when you thought the trombone was cool, so that
right,
you were,
right,
everything was off. at
right,
this point.
right. And so, and how right is that? So I go to the double bass room, and here's where being 11 and being naive worked very much in my favor. So I'm looking at the double bass, and I'm going, 4 strings. My guess is that it's just a big vertical electric bass. I'm sure boom, boom, okay, the open strings are the same tuning. Oh, okay, this is just a big electric bass. So I went on it and I started playing Beat It. And because that's what I was playing on my electric bass at home, you know? And so, you know, a lot of the teachers were like, oh, he can play it. You know? And so, this is like a snapshot of being in a public school that had a really strong music program, of which the teachers were all professional musicians. And I suppose it's like that in schools all over the world. You know, at least in music schools, you know, certainly all of the public schools I knew that had reputable music programs in Philly, all of the teachers were professional musicians by night, you know. And my first bass teacher, her name was Margie Keefe. She was actually a cellist. But man, growing up in Philly being around a bunch of musicians and educators who took that much pride and that much care of their students, because it was Miss Keefe who actually took a group of us, like 15 students. I don't know how she worked it out. You know, when you're in middle school, you don't care about those kinds of things. But
Yeah.
she took us to see Yo-Yo Ma with the Philadelphia Orchestra. And that was a mind-blowing experience. And, you know, because I had never seen the Philadelphia Orchestra before. I had never seen Yo-Yo Ma before.
And you're what, you're 12?
I was 12 by then, yeah. Maybe I was still 11, I don't remember, but somewhere between 11 and 12. And it was early 1984. And the Yo-Yo Ma played the Haydn cello concerto in D. And that melody was so strong, that stuck in my head. And I remember coming home and like the next day I asked Ms. Keefe if there was a recording of that. And she got so filled with emotion, like, you want to hear that again? You know, I said, yeah, that was incredible. And we went on public transportation. That's the other thing I remember. We all had to meet at some, you know, some place, designated spot, and like 15 junior high school kids got on the trolley and went downtown to see the Philadelphia Orchestra. And one of the teachers at Pepper was a jazz trombone player. And he said, man, now that you're playing upright, you should get into jazz. And my great uncle, who's also a bass player, the other bass player in the family, he's the jazz head of the family. So when he found out that I was playing the upright bass, he got so excited. He said, come over to my apartment right away. And he played a bunch of jazz records that he had all ready to go. And probably single-handedly, that visit to my great uncle's apartment made me fall in love with jazz.
Okay, so it's 1984.
Yeah.
You've fallen in love with this.
Yeah.
You just recently played Beat It on your first double bass. 5 years later, you're accepted to the Juilliard School, a classical music institution that does not have a jazz program yet.
Correct.
Tell us about those 5 years leading up to that.
Yeah, so...
and by the way, 1984, maybe you just begun reading music.
Well, actually, I thought about it. It was 83.
Okay.
So, yeah, it was 1983, and yeah, playing in the school orchestra, now I'm learning how to read music. And, you know, growing up in Philadelphia in a place with so much culture, so much music surrounding you all the time, it's kind of, if you're serious about music and you grow up in Philly, it's kind of hard to be a poor musician, like it's skill-wise, because there's always someone around who's inspiring you. So you could get top-level musicianship all the time. So it's not like you can't hear how it's supposed to be done, you know? And almost all of those musicians, particularly the jazz musicians, I find that in the jazz community, because we're so happy when some young person actually likes the music. The first thing we do is say, hey, come with me. You know, we're gonna school you, you know, because we need more people, always. But anyhow, I also fell in love with playing in the orchestra. And so I'm still listening to James Brown, still listening to Motown, still listening to Prince, Michael, Rick James, Aretha, Gladys, early rap, you know, Grandmaster Flash, Sugar Hill Gang, all of that stuff, Africa Bombata. But I'm also listening to the Philadelphia Orchestra. I'm learning things about Yo-Yo Ma, Eugene Orman, who was the musical director of the Philadelphia Orchestra at that time. He retired in '85, I think it was, and Sir Ricardo Muti took over. And so I'm learning about the Philadelphia Orchestra, and I'm learning about this legendary rock scene in Philly, and learning that, you know, Mario Lanza had a lot to do with Philly. So I'm just getting hit with music all over the place. Ms. Keefe, my teacher from Pepper Middle School, said, I want you to audition for the All-City Orchestra. I thought, yeah, okay, fine. I had no idea that to be in the All-City Orchestra, you had to be in high school, senior high school. I was still in 8th grade. And so I go to this first rehearsal with the orchestra, with the All-City Orchestra, and now I'm 12. The distance in maturity between someone 12 and 16 is huge. So I remember going to this rehearsal and I'm seeing what I thought were like grown adults.
Yeah.
And they're like high school juniors, right? And like, they're old and they're really good. I shouldn't be here. And what I remember, which was very painful, that first rehearsal was bad. Because, you know, we were playing like real hard, like, well, it was hard for me. You know, like we played the Bach double violin concerto, we played Scheherazade.
Oh, it's real. You
We
know.
were playing the New World Symphony, all this kind of stuff. So I'm now seeing 16th notes. I'd never seen
On a
16th
bass.
note on a bass part,
Yeah.
right? And like the rest of the bass section, they just, and I'm like literally looking at them like, I can't do that. And so I remember being so horribly embarrassed. And they had a string teacher who was kind of just walking around observing. And I'm thinking, whatever you do, don't stop at my stand. and look over my shoulder. Of course she did. But she put her hand on my back and she said, "You'll be all right. Just keep trying." I was like, "Thank you." And that first year was bad. Oh, it was so bad. And like the section leader was a total jerk. You know, he's like, "What are you doing here? You ain't even supposed to be here. What are you, 12? Get out of here." You know, just that high school bully stuff. But his final year, I had moved up to assistant section leader. So I can't say what I told him because I'm assuming, you know, I mean, my mother could be watching, but basically in short time, I moved way up to near the front of the bass section. So like the first day of rehearsal, I was like, "Hello, blank," just so I can let them know, like, "Remember what you told me? You know, I'm taking your seat next year," you know. So I was never one of these kids that got emotional. I just got revenge. You know, if somebody embarrassed me, I wouldn't cry and be like, "I can't do this." I'd be like, "I'm taking your job." You know, so he might be watching. He's turned out to be a really nice guy. But yeah, I mean, like, he used to torture me, like my first 2 years in All City. And then I'd just suck it up and be like, "You're gonna be on my right real soon."
You know, I mean, well, while you keep telling the story, the two things that come to mind, I think it's probably important for the students to know. One is that, you know, you've really clearly articulated like 2 or 3 moments that only take like 2 seconds in your life that either change your life or reinforce your life, right? I mean, you said the one teacher, how emotional she was, you know, coming back, putting her hand on your back. It almost shudder to think if those 2 seconds didn't happen to you, right?
That's right.
And along with, well, just intestinal fortitude that you had.
Yeah.
And you know, as you go through the story, I wanted to kind of like see now that you're working with the same age students, right? The Jazz House kids that were you know, what do you see, you know, in this world now?
Yeah, I think even before I met Melissa, my dear wife Melissa Walker, who's the founder of Jazz House Kids, even before I met Melissa, there was always a part of me. Well, actually, if you don't mind, I'm going to go all the way back.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. But I was going to say where I was going with that story about the All City Orchestra is that my classical chops had actually gotten pretty good. I started playing in the Temple University Youth Chamber Ensemble, which actually didn't have a bass in it, you know. But they said we'll find chamber music so you can play in the orchestra. And then I started playing in the Philadelphia Youth Orchestra, which basically is like a feeder for a lot of major symphony orchestras. That's, you know, it's like the Jazz House Kids of classical music, if you will. And so I went to Europe with them. That was my first European tour. And so my teacher at that time was a man named Neil Courtney. May he rest in peace. He was the associate principal of the Philadelphia Orchestra for the associate principal bass of the Philadelphia Orchestra for many, many years. And he says, "You know, I'd be curious. You should audition for Juilliard." And I said,
I'd be curious.
I said, "Man, I'm not that good." You know, he's like, "I think you are." I say, No. I'm gonna go to college for jazz, because by that time I had fallen in love with jazz and I knew I wanted to be a jazz musician. So
That's interesting.
yeah. So the most important thing for me at that time was to be in New York. I don't care what college I'm in, as long as it's the New School or the Madden School of Music. I just have to be in New York. Because I felt that being a jazz artist, the jazz artist I wanted to be, I felt that there might have been a ceiling in Philly. I said, all of the people who I'm looking up to on all these albums, they all live in New York. Yeah. But my classical chops were good, so Mr. Courtney said, "You know, you should audition for Juilliard." I said, I'll never get in, but sure, just to say I did it. And so I went to audition, and something that they did, which I thought was actually rather jive. I don't know if it was by accident or if it was a setup, but it's not good if you're nervous about something like an audition for a major college. I could hear the bass players auditioning before me, and they were good. I mean, they were playing like the Echo Sonata, and like, I can't even remember. I went in there with like some old, Marcello Sonata and like a Vivaldi cello piece, but I mean, like these other bass players, they like, up in the nosebleed section, like nailing it, and I'm sitting outside like, I'm going home. I can't play what they're playing, playing Kusevitsky and Dragonetti and just nailing it. And I was like, no, I'm not embarrassing myself. And it was like, okay, Mr. McBride. I'm like, oh man. Well, look, let me get it over with. Just to say, I have been in the building. I auditioned. Let me just knock this out of the way. And then I'm also freaked out because the accompanist, like, I had like 10 minutes to run through my pieces with her.
Me too.
Yeah. And like I don't know if she was sight reading or I don't know what it was. But
She was.
yeah. And like she nailed it perfectly. So now I'm freaked out about the audition. I'm freaked out like, how does she sight read this so perfectly? Like she's gonna make a mistake when we play the audition. So I can't focus, So I go in the room, there's Homer Minch, Eugene Levinson, David Walter, and Orrin O'Brien, bass faculty at Juilliard. And the table was close. They were sitting like right there. So there wasn't a whole lot of distance between the bass and the table. I'm just like, all right, let me just get this disaster over with. So after I played my 2 pieces, Mr. Minch said, which I took as an insult because I was so nervous, he says, can you play a 2-octave C scale? I was like, damn, I just played, like, I worked so hard on these pieces now, I just have to prove that I can play a 2-octave scale? Oh, man. Yeah, all right, fine. So I played the scale and called it a day. I said, well, thank God that's over. The next day, I auditioned at Manhattan School of Music. And the good part was they said, look, you can opt not to have an accompanist if you don't want. I said, yes, I'm just gonna play by myself. Fine. I walk in the room, there's Homer Minch, Eugene Levinson, David Walter, and Orrin O'Brien. Same exact bass faculty at Manhattan School of Music. And I was like, this is a nightmare. But this time, no one was accompanying me, and they were way in the back of the room. I don't say this very often, but I think I hit a grand slam. Yeah. That audition was killing.
But amazing, they got to hear you twice, man.
Right. And it's amazing what a little distance can do.
That's right.
Because before they were right up on me like this, back up. But much to my shock, about 3 weeks later, my mom came yelling and screaming. She was like, look. And she was holding an envelope from Juilliard. She was like, if they were turning you down, they wouldn't send it in an envelope this big. I remember that vividly, and went to Juilliard.
Not to geek out here for a moment, but on trombone. So Joe Alessi, is a principal trombonist in New York Phil.
Yeah.
And a trombone teacher at Juilliard. And
did he play Chick's piece, or was that somebody else that did that?
No, yeah, I think
Joe
he
did play that, right?
Joe played that, yeah. And so, anyway, if you got done with your audition at Juilliard and Joe asked you to play a C scale 2 octaves, there may be a good chance you're getting in. because he could hear everything he needed to know
Yeah.
about your playing by playing a C scale 2 octaves. So
Right.
that was amazing. You just said that. It's a thing.
I wish I'd have known that then,
Yeah, right.
because that just made me depressed. Like, oh man. And then I went to Juilliard and started studying with Homer Minch, who I miss a lot. You know, he was the principal bassist in the New York Phil for over 40 years, and he always had a soft spot for the jazz bass players. And so whenever I would take a lesson with him, the first 10 minutes would be him asking me, you know, hey, where'd you gig this weekend? You know, you talk about somebody who was
A legend.
yeah,
A legend.
yeah. This is how well he knew his craft. I would go to his apartment and he would sit in a chair and he'd light up a pipe, you know, he'd smoke his pipe on occasion and he would read a newspaper. So he'd be like, okay, Christian, you can start whenever you want. So he'd be smoking his pipe, reading the newspaper, and he would have his exercises where there would be 3 things to read, and it was hard because there would be the exercise, and then he would have what exact fingering he wanted you to use and what string to play it on. So you're reading 3 things simultaneously. So I was of that, you know, well, that doesn't really fit for my hand. I think it sounds better on this string. I was like, well, he's not looking. All he cares is that I play the right notes. I was like, just play the right notes, play in tune, and get the phrasing right. So every now and then I slip up, and he'd be like, he wasn't looking. His newspaper was in front of him, you know. Christian, that was amazing. It sounded good, but you're supposed to play that C with your second finger on an A string. And in bar 62, I think it was, you're supposed to do a string crossing there from the D string to the G string with your 4th finger. Sounds like you probably did a shift there. I was like, damn! He could just tell from the tonality of the instrument exactly what you played and how you played it. I was like, man, this cat is deep, you know. So it's that level of seriousness, and you know, I miss him a lot. All my teachers were great, man, and they all cared about spending extra time with you if they knew you needed it, you know.
Well, tell me about, yeah, I mean, for me, I just, as an aside, it's really hard for me because, you know, for all those moments that I feel so fortunate to have had, used to feel so fortunate to have, that like kept you on that track.
Yeah.
I just feel like there are thousands of kids these days who were that 1 second away from staying on that track that get off, right?
Right.
Because I just happen to feel like out of the thousands of students who start a musical instrument, they're all probably talented at it with the right thing, and we're kind of teaching the talent, or not teaching the talent out of the talent, right? So I'm just going to leave that there. But like with all the education work you're doing with Jazz House Kids, you know, what do you see in your students these days, especially your high school students, or even if I could put them on the spot, these guys that you work with today, you know, what are you seeing?
Well, the thing that really turns me on the most, that just is the greatest thing in the world to see, is just pure interest. You know, it's like the fact that you even are considering playing an instrument, and you were considering using that instrument in a jazz idiom. I mean, like 100% of my being is to help and inspire you to maintain and grow that interest into a professional level. And if not, what you learned as a musician, you can apply to any endeavor in life, you know? So my goal as a mentor, as a teacher, as a bassist, is not to get you to follow any particular blueprint. It's to do whatever I can do to help you sustain interest and learn as much as you possibly can, so you can continue to be inspired by what I share with you, or people I can introduce you to, or music that I can play for you. But I realize even with that, that person might not become a professional musician, because I know how, everybody's different. Everybody has a different rhythm. Everybody has a different set of changes. I'm using metaphors here. Everybody has a different time signature, so I have to find out where you are so I can help you get to that next level. But I know how I was. I shouldn't say was, because I was pretty tenacious. I was a kid that thought like, I'll fall as many times as I need to, but I'm not going to get counted out.
Yeah, I mean, you made that very clear. That
Yeah.
actually, you get challenged and you're like, okay,
Yeah,
that's you.
yeah. I mean,
And that's still you now?
you put me in a challenging situation where I know I might fall on my ass and be embarrassed, I'll accept that, but it ain't gonna happen the second time. And if it happens the second time, I'm gonna keep on doing it until I get it right, so I like to think I'm driven. I'm surprised I don't come off that way. People are like, oh, you're always so calm and you're so cool. It's like, people don't know I'm a pretty nasty dog deep down inside.
Yeah.
But it's my job to never let anyone see that.
Yeah, well, same. But, and when you, so to just come back to the first thing I said, when you go to christianmcbride.com and you hit the about, and it's all of your performing, all of your teaching, all of your YouTube videos, all of your interviews, all of your podcasts, all of your Aspen, leading different institutions. You can't do that in 24 hours. Most humans cannot do that. So the fires, what's that?
I don't either. Not 24 hours.
Yeah, but it's that, you've just gone out of your comfort zone over and over and over again and made it your comfort zone. It's right there in your bio. So, that's clear. But it's funny you say that, because it's like, don't be fooled by the laid back, because there is, but don't be fooled. And that's kind of what you're saying.
Look, I think the core, I think I'm a pretty good combination of empathy, because I'm acutely aware that everyone needs different things. And I know what helped me when I was a kid. It was someone saying, hey man, keep it up. You know what I mean? No, you don't sound good now, but you will. Just keep it up. You know what I mean? Here's some things you can do to work on. And because I got bullied a lot and teased a lot, just one person, to pat on the back and say, hey, just keep it up, you're gonna be all right. That did like wonders for me, So sometimes I think that might be all people need. They just need somebody to put their hand on their back and be, hey, keep it up, you're gonna be all right,
Yeah.
I hope that gives them the jolt that they gave me. Now, you and I both have had some instructors, I'm sure, at various points, had
With
some
you?
very heavy-handed
Yeah.
tactics. I appreciated them too. Because at the same time, you do have to really work hard. And certain teachers would not allow you to get comfortable. And so they have to keep that extra foot in your butt you know.
The extra foot.
The extra foot, that's right. And some of those teachers, you know, it's kind of like,
Yeah.
but in retrospect, I really appreciate, in contrast with what kind of got me, I appreciated that too. I mean, I remember playing in Freddie Hubbard's band for 2.5 years, and like, some of the stuff, like I remember being in his band, like I never had to deal with before or since. First of all, we never rehearsed. So like, what jazz legend, like playing with Freddie Hubbard was like being a defensive coordinator. You'd have to watch videotape of the last 5 gigs and guess what they were going to do.
Wow.
You know, and so, you know, and back then there was no YouTube, obviously. So you had to talk to the guys in the band. Hey, what's the repertoire? What songs do I need to learn? Okay, yeah, we usually start off the set with this, and then we go into that, but, you know, learn this just in case, you know. And so, you know, I would learn like 25 songs, and sometimes he would call stuff that wasn't on that list, and get mad if you didn't know it.
Wow.
And like, well, we don't rehearse. How do you expect people to know it? He's like, hey, you're in my band. You're supposed to know everything I've written. That's kind of unrealistic. But that's how some of them old cats were, man. Just,
wow.
You know, they lived to put you in uncomfortable situations just to see how you would do.
Mm-hmm. It really tangent, but I you know, keep wanting to ask. As COVID was going down and now post-COVID, what's been amplified to you about, well, what you're doing in education specifically, but in the music world in general? Is there anything that's been amplified? Because for me, right, I always say it again, the good, the bad, and the ugly was amplified for all of us in so many different ways.
Yeah.
But what in this whole process of growing as a musician, regardless of the level, has been amplified for you, if anything?
I remember the very first gig I played with other musicians during the pandemic, and it was in October of 2020. And at that point, it had been 6 months or 7 months since I had played with anyone in person, anyone else on this gig. And I remember once we started playing together, it literally was just like, I miss this. Like the brain explosion of playing music with people again. It was a great feeling. And I don't think that that's changed much because, you know, we didn't know when we were going to get back to playing with each other again. So I think there was just sheer joy and appreciation of human contact, you know, and creating harmony together again. That's probably the thing that has stood out the most for me, just how happy the musicians are to be back together again. And I think in turn, the people who come to hear the live music, they've been hungry too. So then when they can see the musicians are happy, that makes them happy.
That's a great answer. And it's true, you know, just the appreciation, right? The gratefulness. Well, before I open it up for some audience questions, because an hour goes quick. So in this hour, we covered Christian McBride from the age of 9 to 14. Next time, we'll because really, I mean, my God, I could do this forever. But for all the students who are here, we've got students, and it's amazing to me, actually, right? Because whether it's Juilliard, Manhattan, our alma mater, this school, there are thousands upon thousands of students who still want to create a life in music. And you're right, wherever that takes them. What do you tell them now about that life in music and while they're on their trip? Is there room for them? And you know, what do you want them to know as they're like really immersed in this right now?
Is there room for them? There's ample room. Like I said, we always need more people playing this music, appreciating this music, supporting this music, just overall, you know. I don't know, I guess at this stage in your development, see, I've always been really sort of goal-oriented. I find that most success stories that I know of come with a goal attached. This is what I'm going for. And once I get that, I'm going to do this. And then once I get that, I'm going to do this. And it wouldn't be bad if you had, see for me when I was in high school, the gig I wanted more than anything else was Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. I wanted to play with Art Blakey. So I spent like my junior and senior years of high school learning every song from every Art Blakey record I could get my hands on. Anytime Art Blakey or I knew someone who was in the band, hey, what music are you guys playing? Because one day I'm going to get that gig and I'm going to be prepared. The flip side of this is that my academics suffered badly. Thank God Juilliard didn't need
transcripts.
Transcript of my grades.
Yeah, I'm with you actually.
Right. But Art Blakey was not a composer. So while I'm learning the book of Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, I'm actually learning the music of Freddie Hubbard. I'm actually learning the music of Wayne Shorter. I'm actually learning the music of Benny Golson. I'm actually learning the music of Cedar Walton. If I don't get a gig with Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, I might wind up getting a gig with any of those other 4 people who are actual composers who have bands of their own right now. And then I got to know, and I got to meet and know Wynton Marsalis when I was still in high school. Through Wynton, I got to know Branford. And then shortly after I met Branford, I met Terrence Blanchard and Alan Harrison, who were like, they were the most popular faces of the first wave of Young Lions in the 80s. So I thought, man, I could see their bands anytime. I'm gonna learn their music. I might get a gig with them. So I learned as much music as I possibly could, but I guess all in all, inside of that was like, I want to be in New York and I want to play with every musician that I think I can learn from. That for me was success. You know, if I could play with Freddie Hubbard, if I could play with Bobby Watson, if I could play with McCoy Tyner, I got to figure out how to play with them because that's where my sights are set, you know. So I feel like that the return on my investment was actually correct in terms of like, I'm going to play with them. I'm going to learn their music. I didn't care about if I won a poll. I didn't care if I made a lot of money. I cared about gaining credibility with all of these great musicians who I admired. With that would come level 2. Level 2 would become clearer, you know. So I would say really set a goal for yourself. If you're kind of in that place where you kind of don't really know what you want to do, that's fine. It'll come to you soon. Don't worry, you know. But set a goal, figure out what it is exactly what you want to do. And then ask yourself, what is success? Everybody, I talk to a lot of college students, and frankly, young people who are out of college. Sometimes it alarms me what a lot of younger people think success is. And I'm here to tell you, a blue check is not that important. Now, and people under 50 might not know what that means, but if you're on social media, everybody somehow feels like the blue check is the most important. That validates you. That means you're important. Like, wow, that's where we are now? You know, no, verification on social media does not make you important. Someone you look up to say, hey, I want to hire you, that's what's important. That's your blue check. Having a goal set for yourself and meeting that goal is the most important thing. You can have a blue check all you want and still have no gigs. Somebody who you look up to doesn't respect you, and you'll have a blue check. So what do you want to do? Go around talking about, hey, you know, it's foolish. You know, look at something much more substantial and long-term in terms of what success means. Success for me means I get to bring up a group of young musicians and help put them in situations where they're going to have to kind of find their own way, you know. My career is no longer about how many awards I win, but it's how many people I can help get set up to win awards. You know, that's why I've been really proud, mostly in my most recent career, bringing people like Christian Sands to worldwide attention. People like Warren Wolf, people like Josh Evans, people like Emmett Cohen. You know, and now people like Nicole Glover and Savannah Harris and Mike King. You know, Eli Perlman. So that's my job now, is to help raise the next generation.
That's your legacy. Well, anyway, thank you for that answer. We have time for just a couple of audience questions. I'm going to pass this. Actually, would you mind, man, if I give you this microphone? You can pass it around to anybody who raise their hand. Could we just please have the lights up for this one, if you don't mind? And while they turn up the lights, I want to say that, first of all, I'm so happy you're with us this year. I mean, this is going to be fun. You're going to have a good time, I promise.
I know I am.
And I want to thank everybody who makes these kind of things possible. You know, Catherine Lockwood, our coordinator of the Immersive Residency Program, Stephanie Hagerstone over there, our Associate Director, Oscar Perez, the head of the jazz area, Oscar, our staff, faculty, our students, obviously, our advisory board, our very own Rose Cali, who's here this evening as well. Rose. Okay, so how about a few questions, and we're gonna have you gonna do a handoff? Oh, you're gonna do the first question. Good, well played.
Yeah.
And, who has a question? There we go. This gentleman in the back.
I know that guy.
What qualities do you find universal in all the young musicians that you look for to hire? Like, what's something that kind of unifies them even in their varying styles, backgrounds?
Hunger, if that means anything. Like I can tell when a younger musician's like, I want this gig. I really want this because I want to learn. But now that has to maintain, because I know a lot of young musicians who will get the gig and then they'll start being like, I got the gig, now I can chill. You know, It's harder to keep the gig than it is to get the gig. Remember that in any job you get in life. It's harder to keep it than it is to get it. So hunger, that's what I look for. That's what the thread is.
Great. Anyone else?
So you talked a lot about.
All my people here.
You talked a lot about falling down, always like striving to get better and stuff like that. What are things that you've done or thought about and felt about in those times of like dark times of like falling down? What helped you like get up during those times?
I think about what happens if I don't get up. That's what I think about. I think about what are your options if you get so embarrassed or you get so distraught that you never get this gig back or you never learn from this situation. I guess my goal, I wanted to be a professional jazz musician and really learn from all of my heroes so badly, I was willing to look like an idiot in front of them if I had to in order to stay in the game. You know, I played plenty of gigs with Freddie Hubbard or with Hank Jones, or I told a story, I don't know if some of you guys were around here earlier, but I played this gig with Clark Terry, and you know, they called some song and I didn't know, or musicians who thought they were being motivational, but they were actually being abusive. I'm not calling no names, but I actually knew that, so I was able to have a filter of somewhere in the middle of this abuse is a worthwhile message. Work real hard at getting to that, you know. So gathering information for the betterment of myself was more important than being embarrassed or even hurt, you know. But it always helped now when somebody was there to give you the proverbial pat on the back to say, hey, look, just hang in there. That happened my very first gig in New York. Revisionist history always says, oh, Christian McBride came to New York and right away became the darling of the jazz scene. Like, how idiotic is that? You know, like my first gig in New York was pretty much close to a disaster, but on the paper, it says Christian McBride's first gig in New York was with Bobby Watson's Horizon. No one would ever take the moment to think, that gig might have been bad. They just see, oh, he played with Bobby Watson. Oh yeah, lucky you at age 17, Mr. Big Shot. You know, like Bobby Watson was not, he didn't like the way I played. I almost got fired, you know. I didn't, but I get to put on my resume, play with Bobby Watson at age 17. Y'all think that looks good. Don't ever put me in a time capsule and make me relive that first gig. And, you know, Bobby was having issues with my beat placement. You know, he thought me and the drummer weren't really locking up. I thought we were, but when he and the drummer both kind of got on me, like, hey man, you need to get this together. And I mean, they were like on me too, you know. James Williams, who was playing piano, he was the guy that night who was like, hey, it's cool, you'll be all right. That single-handedly got me through the gig. Single-handedly got me through the gig. So moments like that, moments like when Freddie Hubbard decided to call But Beautiful, which we had never played before while we were making a live album. And for the rest of my life, there's a recording of me playing the wrong changes on But Beautiful. But you see, Christian McBride played with Freddie Hubbard when he was 18. And man, you know, every single person falls flat on their ass or on their face and break their nose. But you gotta get up and make sure the bones heal. You know, you get out there and keep running. You know, if you want it that bad, you know. And you know, that goes back to that thing, like, I really am all about empathy and meeting a person where they are. I want to help you. But I'm also dangerously tenacious when it comes to getting something out of a situation. So don't think I'm ever empathetic without a goal in mind. You know, and it's to help you get to a place where I think you can go. But I'm never that kind of guy that, I'm not the teacher in Whiplash. You know, people thought that was a drama. That was a comedy to me. I can't think of too many people who, you know, I always said that, like, the work that I did to try to get the gig with Freddie Hubbard and McCoy Tyner, all these people who I eventually wound up playing with, I really believe in my heart there's no such thing as, you put that much of an investment in anything, you'll get something out of it. Absolutely no doubt. You might not get it when you want it, but you'll get it. Absolutely you'll get it. And I always like to say, Jazz House Kids is another example of what I mean by that. What Melissa has done with Jazz House Kids, there's no way you can't get some sort of incredible investment on the work that she's put into starting it and maintaining it. So, yeah, Melissa is another example of someone who, she's 100%. Yeah, it's gonna be some rough times, but it means that much that I'm gonna stick to it. So,
Very good.
get that drive going. Get that drive.
What?
Hello, honey.
Oh, your wife's gonna ask a question. Here we go.
After 17 years, I still have questions. You seem
19 years.
19 years.
Oh!
Well, here, this is the question. You seem to have worked as hard on your instrument as being really historian of this music. And did that come to you naturally? Did you make a decision? I mean, I have watched you in so many settings. Hey, McCoy says, yeah, McBride, when did I record that record? And you know the year, you knew who played on it. Yes, you've got that incredible memory, but was that something you consciously worked on? And what do you think that brought to your music and your kind of stature as an artist, to have that real understanding from a historical context?
Thank you, honey. I love when she asks questions or makes observations. So that's that Brown University coming out. I don't know how or why I became a historian. I think I don't know. I've always been deeply fascinated by history. I think if I could go back to when I was a kid and those old Jet and Ebony magazines that my grandmother used to save, I would study the fashions of a particular year. Like my grandmother would have these old Ebony magazines from like 1966. And I would see how the men in the ads back then would have these skinny ties and like the pencil leg suits. And by 69, those pants had widened out, and also studying this, you're gonna laugh at this, but it really fueled my sense as a historian. Studying James Brown's hairdos.
Yes.
I can look at any photo of James Brown and tell you the exact period when that photo was taken. He had a very, shirt on the side, little, pompadour. He had that until 62, and then from 62 to 66, it was just full blown out like Little Richard pompadour, right? 67, he cut it down a little bit, still cooked, still conked, but it was shorter. From 68 to 69, he went Black Power and cut it all off and went natural. 70 to 72, he went straight afro, natural afro. January of 73, he started cooking his hair again. And it pretty much stayed like that for the rest of his career. Now, what made it different, so he got his process back in January 73.
You guys writing this down?
And he had a soul patch, like right there under the lip. January 74, he grew a mustache. And he kept the soul patch. 78, he shaved the mustache and the soul patch. And pretty much he kept that look for the rest of his career. In 1992, he got a new jaw. And when he had his teeth implants. And then so like James Brown's jaw went from here to here. So I can look at any James Brown picture and give you the exact. So going to that extent with somebody like James Brown started to trickle over to jazz albums, you know. Knowing that McCoy Tyner sounded one way, like for me the demarcation point for McCoy Tyner is 1962. So like he almost sounds like McCoy Tyner from 1959 to early 62. Then 62 to Coltrane's death is when he started, that's when he started becoming McCoy Tyner. And then after 1967, it became like McCoy Tyner, like he was his own planet, right? And then late 80s McCoy Tyner, the Jerry Curl era McCoy Tyner, it was a different vibe. And then like late 90s McCoy Tyner, he like, his chops got like super duper strong again. So yeah, it like studying context really helps me play a lot better, I think, you know.
Oh yeah, one last quick question all the way in the back.
I'm sorry about the James Brown hair
No, I know
masterclass.
you've been waiting to actually unleash that for a very long time.
Hi, Christian. I think I speak for a lot of people in this room to say how proud we are to have you in our community.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I have a quick question. How are we doing with attracting and educating women, girls? You've been around the world, around the country a few times. How are we doing?
I surely see more young girls interested in this music than I've ever seen. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. You know, there's this funny story, I don't know how true it is. Someone once asked the late, great Joe Zawinul why fusion died. And he says, because we don't have enough women who play it or like it. You know, he's like, man, you know, too many dudes in fusion. That's why it didn't last, you know. So he allegedly made that statement like, you know, 40 years ago, right? I think consciously and subconsciously, jazz in general tends to think that, okay, well, we are a very small group. We're a very small family when it comes to musicians and people who actually like the music as a whole in the big world. You know, like that famous number, jazz albums are responsible for like, what, 2% of all of album sales throughout the world? It's a very small number, right? And the only thing that's small is classical music, you know? So like, and classical music has the same issues, you know? We think of ourselves as this small, tight-knit community, and whoever doesn't like it, we're not trying to get you to like it. Obviously, you know, we've tried, so we just gonna stay and protect, you know, this is it. So I think inadvertently, we turned off a lot of young girls and a lot of women from this music. In fact, it became an issue that like, and this is where men could be so incredibly dumb, right? We had a thing like, you would hear some guy say like, if a woman did like your music, oh, you softening it up, you know, you playing too soft, you know, come on, man, you know, you know, you got to play it hard. And like, think about that way of thinking. Like, women like your music. That means it's too soft. You know, you got to play hard. You know, it's like, isn't that counterproductive? Don't you want more people than like those big nasty hard legs like you liking the music? You know, and so I think in recent years, I have seen more people come to their senses and say, you know what, we absolutely need more young girls, more young women in our community playing, appreciating it, playing it, you know, just not having this be an exclusive boys club. And I can tell you that when I first came to the scene, some of my closest friends and musicians who I learned from were Cindy Blackman. Cindy Blackman was like a big sister to me. Renee Rossness has always been one of my closest and dearest friends. Terry Lynn Carrington had always been someone who I looked up to just as a visionary. You know, she was playing with, you know, Woody Shaw and Clark Terry when she was, you know, 13, 14 years old, to the point where like none of us like actually thought of her gender at all. You know, it's kind of like, oh, that's just Terry Lynn Carrington. She's sort of above human, you know. All kinds of, Ingrid Jensen was somebody who I met when I first moved to New York, you know, 30 plus years ago. So I learned so much, you know, not to mention the late great Jerry Allen, but there were so many great women musicians that I learned from. It never dawned on me that, why aren't there more? You know, I think I was so occupied with getting gigs and trying to be a part of this scene. Probably the level of, you know, representation, that wasn't on my radar at that time, because I was just simply trying to hit all my points of what I wanted to be as a professional musician. But now that I'm not in that position anymore, I can now start to try to balance that out in my own groups, which I think I'm doing not too bad of a job of in this new band that I have with Nicole Glover and Savannah Harris. And there have been some musicians through the years who I think have really addressed that issue. They haven't actually gotten proper credit for it. You know, Quincy Jones had 2 women in his band, and like that literally goes over everybody's head. He had Patty Bone playing piano, and he had Melba Liston in the trombone section when nobody had women in their big bands at that time. So Quincy Jones really should get a lot of credit for that. And also Melba Liston was one of his chief arrangers in that band. So she wasn't simply just playing trombone, she was writing for the band. And to which Quincy is just like, hey, where's my props? You know, I was a trailblazer, you know. And like, Quincy, you've done enough superhero things in your life. Wayne Shorter is another one, you know. Speaking of what Joe Zawinul said about fusion and what Wayne Shorter has done in his bands through the years, he's always employed numerous women musicians in his groups. And again, I'm paraphrasing, but Wayne said something like, and we all know he's right, said women have a certain superpower that would take my music to where it needs to be, you know. So that was a long way of saying, I think I feel like that scale is getting more like this, at least than I've ever seen it on the scene, and I hope it keeps up that way.
It needs not to be an issue.
Exactly.
Well, we've gone over as we always do here, but the only reason we're using the mics is not for everybody in here, is actually because
right.
the stream. So thank you, sir. Appreciate it, man.
Sorry, give him a hand, So, are you checking out the Yankees score? Is that what you're doing?
The Yankees won.
Okay. All right. Yankee Philly World Series, here we go. But,
Well, you gotta be Houston first.
Yeah, I know. So I wanna thank everybody, obviously, for being here. You know, what we're trying to do at the Cali School, obviously, is to really kind of engage everybody here, all of our students, in all these different ways with all these amazing people. And I'm happy you're gonna be visiting throughout the year, as are ours in residence. And we really wanna go outside of this school too, and affect, you know, the greater ecosystem, which we're trying to do a little bit every week. Harlem Quartet, we're going to the Montclair Golf Club on Wednesday, and you know, we're going to be hanging with everybody there. So, but I guess I just will end with saying, talking about those little moments, right, that we were talking about, because I know that you know, you spent hours here today, and we're going to multiply that by many, many days. But you know, by the end of it, even by the end of today, I know that there were about 2 seconds. I know that changed students' lives while they were with you here. And you never know when they're gonna happen, you can never guess it, but you know it happened, and that's what kind of this is about. So I really wanna thank you, Christian, and I'm so happy you're our neighbor and you're with us this year at the Cali School. Thank you.
If you don't mind me saying one last thing before we call it night, those 2 seconds, obviously, you know it could happen in reverse sometimes as well. You know, I remember a musician once, the great drummer and mentor, Michael Carvin. Some musician was telling Michael about an experience that they had with a musician who they admired. You know, oh, I met such and such, and oh man, he was such a jerk, and you know, I couldn't believe how mean they were. And Mr. Carvin just kind of, you know, heard him out. And after it was over, Mr. Carvin said, well, just playing devil's advocate here for a second. How well do you know that person? Like, I want you to think about, they might have gotten a phone call this morning that they have cancer. They might have gotten a phone call that their wife is sick, or they might have gotten hurt, or their child might have gotten in a car accident, or somebody they know might have been shot or harmed or stabbed. So that was a way of saying, look, while you might not have caught that person on a good day, don't always hold that against them, because you don't know what other people are going through. So if you ever have those 2 seconds when you meet someone and they are other than what you hope they would be, give them some room. You know, they might just be having a really bad day.
I appreciate the humanity that we have been on that one. Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody, Christian McBride.
Now, time to go watch the Phillies.